So today, because it's February, we're going to focus on, the subject of love, but particularly love in marriage. And that's why the theme of our topic tonight is myths and truths about marriage. The reason why many marriages fail because they come into marriage sometimes with the wrong ideas about what marriage really is all about, okay? And that's why we would like to discover what are the myths that need to be corrected and what are the truths that we need to stand on so we'll be able to have a better marriage, especially with our spouse. For those of us who are single, can you raise your hands, please, all the single guys? Okay, great. This is a very good preparation for you. And if you already have a girlfriend and you're planning to get married, this is very, very relevant for you because this is definitely a primer on what you're getting yourself into, right? But for the other young men who are still studying, you're still in school and you're still a little far, from really thinking about marriage, but you may have a girlfriend or maybe courting somebody, you will learn a lot of principles here of how a real man wins the heart of a woman. Okay? And so, let's take a look at the keys to making your marriage last for a lifetime. The first myth that many of us have about marriage is that in marriage, love is enough. Okay? Many times when I interview a couple who wants to be married, often the question I ask is, now why did you choose this person? And usually the answer, because he makes me happy. Remember I shared this with you before when you talk about how to love a woman. How many of you were here when we talked about how to love a woman? Okay, yeah, almost 50%, okay? So this is like a part 2 of the topic, okay? So, when I ask this couple, I say, why did you choose to marry this person? I mean, there are other guys out there. There are other women out there. Why particularly this man and why particularly this woman? Usually the answer is that there are many things that he sees in this person or she sees in this person that makes him feel happy, makes him feel secure, okay? So it's usually qualities or things the person did that touched his life or made him, feel that this guy really loves me, okay? And so that's why we want to get married. So my question is, do you think it's because this person makes me more happy than any other person, therefore that is a good ground for getting married? Is that the right ground for getting married? Okay, why do you say no? Okay, because the premise upon which the marriage is being established is that you make me happy. Right? We enter marriage because we're committed to make another person happy for the rest of our lives. We marry because we love the person, not because we want love. Of course, we also need love. But the primary reason why we get married because we're entering into a lifetime commitment to make that person happy. Okay? So marriage is not about me becoming happy first, but rather me committing myself to the happiness of this person. And so, as the first 5 years of marriage begin to, pass, sometimes married people start with trying to make the other person happy, but someday down the road, sometimes the orientation changes. Later on, we tend to become more concerned about me being happy in this marriage. And so what happens, we tend to start complaining about our spouse. We tend to find fault. And later on, because there's more focus on what's wrong with the other person, the marriage begins to break down. Okay? Because we are now losing the very purpose of that marital decision. I married you because I'm committed to make you happy. And it's very difficult to fulfill that commitment if we don't have that conviction in our heart and that character that we need to sustain that kind of commitment for the rest of our lives. And the commitment to make the other person happy is regardless of our circumstances, regardless of the changes that we may see in each other. It's unconditional commitment for better or for worse until death do us part. Okay? And so, is love enough? Well, it takes more than romantic love to make a marriage work. It's not even about compatibility. There are some men who come to me and say, but I have to test out with this girl, If you don't try to live together first, you won't know if you're compatible enough to get married. So live in muna. And so as we live in, then we'll discover if we're compatible or not. And then after that, then we get married. Okay? So that's a common argument by people who want to be sure that when they get married, you have the right compatible partner, right? Okay? But for us Christians, we recognize, of course, if you live with a woman without, exchanges vows before God, we know that's living in immorality. And the Word of God is very clear about that, okay? But is compatibility the most important thing in a marriage? Is compatibility the most important thing in marriage? It is important, but it is not the most important thing. Okay? Let me share you. Success in marriage is not determined by compatibility, but by commitment. Okay? A marriage works not because two people are compatible. A marriage works because they are committed to make it work. Even people who are compatible, sometimes the differences at certain points in their experience may far outweigh their compatibilities. Especially with something to do with character and habits. Okay? So you may have a lot of things in common with one another, but sometimes it is those habits that oftentimes become a cause of regular friction between a man and a woman in marriage, right? And sometimes those habits that you just cannot stand in the other person, later on becomes what? The source of irritation in the marriage. And that's why in the end, what makes a marriage last is not because you're compatible, but because you're committed to make that marriage work. And we'll find ways to make it work. Okay? God defines the man's commitment in the marriage in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5. This is a law that God gave in the Old Testament to the people of Israel. But sadly to speak, not everybody pays attention to this command, even in Israel. Okay? This is what the Word of God says. A newly married man must not be drafted into the army or be given any other official responsibilities. He must be free to spend 1 year at home, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. Wow. I think every wife who will be there at the back will be very happy to hear this, right? And just wish it's happening. Okay? You see, in ancient Israel, it is your highest privilege to be part of the army. Because that's the army of Yahweh. The army of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. And so, when you are in the army, if you are, when a battle takes place against an enemy nation, usually you will be separated from your family from 3 months up to 3 years. And usually take around 3 years for a siege. When your nation's army is laying siege to another nation in order to ensure its defeat, it will take around a minimum of 3 years. And so you'll be separated from your wife for a long time, from 3 months to 3 years. And if you are serving in any official responsibility in the kingdom during that time, and the kingdom is at war, it's the same way. It's like you're one of the soldiers. You can go back to your home. You have to stay on duty for as long as the battle rages there in another country. Because your country, your kingdom, has to be vigilant against any enemy attack. Okay? And so God said, if you're newly married, you better get a leave from the army, get a leave from our official responsibilities, and for 1 year, stay at home with your wife and focus on making her happy. So what are the implications here in terms of God's view of marriage? He's saying, I want you to develop the habit in 1 year of learning to put the happiness of your wife above your own. Because if you can build that habit for 1 year, it will be a habit that will be with you for all your life. And when you have the habit of putting the happiness of your wife first, that is your one, way to avoid falling into adultery. Most men who fall into adultery are more concerned about their happiness and forget about the happiness of their wives. Most men who fall into adultery are more concerned about their happiness and forget about the happiness of their children. He doesn't even consider how this will impact his children and generations to come. He's more concerned about, I have to be happy. You understand that? That's why God said, no, for 1 year, you only focus on one thing, make your wife happy. That is my commandment. Because that is the only way that you can keep yourself from falling into adultery, because you've developed a habit that you will carry on for the rest of your life. That even if I am not as happy with my wife, I will still commit myself to her happiness and find ways to make our marriage work. Okay? And so, that is, God defines what kind of commitment we must give to our wives. So, for the young men, how many of you are singles here? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Wow, there's a lot of them. Great. One of the ways you can develop this even before having a girlfriend or, getting married is your mom. If your mother and your father are fighting all the time, that means both of them are no longer happy with each other, right? But you can make a lot of difference if you can just make your mother happy in whatever way. Because when a woman is not happy, everything is affected in the home. Everything is affected, right? But if you make your mom happy, try to find ways to make her happy, you will be contributing somehow to the improvement of the marriage. Because a wife needs to ventilate all her frustrations. If there's just too many of that, there will be no end to the fighting. But if there's more feeling of consolation and comfort from the children, that enables a woman, your mother, to balance, her perspective in the family, and, because she feels affirmed and loved by the children, at least that is a buffer for her, to keep her from really getting heavy and hard against the husband, because she feels loved by the children. Okay? That's good practice for you guys. Start with your mother, okay? Many people enter marriage with what they call a fairy tale syndrome. That's why in my pre-marital counselings, I would always tell them this. Many people, when they get into marriage, think they're entering into a castle of their dreams. Wow, especially for the woman, right? There are wives here at the back. Do you agree when you first decided to marry your husband, because you love him so much, and finally you're getting married, he proposed to you, in a very dramatic way, and then you said, yes. And then finally, you get to the wedding day, and how do you feel as a woman? It feels like, wow, I'm getting into the castle of my dreams. This is my dream, right? Okay. Well, the fact is, getting married is like entering more into a construction project rather than a castle, already built castle, okay? Why? Because marriage is about work. When you get into marriage, you're starting a construction project where both of you have to work on that marriage and together begin to build the castle of your dreams together. Okay, it takes the two of you to build that castle. One cannot do it alone. You've got to work together. And you must be willing to adjust, make the necessary changes so that you will have a better relationship with each other. And later on, as you mature in that relationship, later on you'll have a very happy marriage. Okay? And so it means a lot of work investment before it can bring the returns of a satisfying and fulfilling relationship. We men, okay, not women, we guys, as men, because we are designed by God to be performance-oriented, our hunger is to achieve, right? And once we achieve, we feel we have conquered, especially the heart of a woman, right? So during the courtship, we put out our best, best front. You're not a very thoughtful person, but suddenly you become very thoughtful. You're not a poet, but one day you suddenly find yourself writing poems. You know what romantic love does to men? It brings out the best in them, right? Right? You might hate to walk a long way, but because you love that girl who is around 3 kilometers away, you're willing to walk 3 kilometers for the first time in your life because you're inspired by your romantic feelings for this girl, right? And our desire is to win the heart of this woman, right? So we'll do everything to win the heart of the person. And then finally when he says, yes, victory, I have conquered. And so the marriage takes place, and after the wedding day, the arms are now laid down, and gradually, as the years go by, the wife begins to be taken for granted. Because now the man is looking for new worlds to conquer. I've conquered this woman, this is now my wife, I'm happy about her, and we're enjoying our life together, but I have to conquer something new now. I've already conquered something I want. And so sometimes the work, the job, the business becomes the new world to conquer. You're always trying to find achievement. We don't feel meaningful as men. Our significance is based on our ability to achieve things. But once we achieve something, sometimes we begin to take those things for granted. And that's the time when the marriage sometimes begins to decline in the intensity of your commitment to your spouse, because you're finding new worlds to conquer. Okay? So that's why we need to recognize that courtship, as often has been said, does not end in marriage. Courtship is a lifetime process. You never stop courting your life. That's why God said for 1 year, do everything, be creative. How do you make your wife happy? Okay? How many of you have seen the movie Fireproof? Oh, glad, I'm happy. There are many who have seen that. You know, there are very simple steps in how you can express love to another person. And you need to be creative. You know, just, prepare a cup of coffee in the morning. You've never done that before, Or one day, just buy her that piece, that piece in the kitchen that is already old and, it's already wearing out. And you're thoughtful enough to buy her a new one. She was planning to buy one, but you anticipated it, and when she receives that gift, wow, I was planning to buy one like this. Well, I thought about it. I mean, your wife really fall more in love with you because of your thoughtfulness. Sometimes just write her a letter one day out of the blue and say, I just love you. In everything that I may be busy in my work, but I always think about you. Or sometimes, you go back home one day with just one rose. And one rose is enough for a woman because that tells her that you remembered her. Little things like this make a marriage last for a long time. These are love actions. Love is not just a feeling, it is something you do. You have to plan, how do I make her happy? And you have to plan the ways. 1, I'll buy her this. 2, I will do this. I will, help her in the washing of the clothes, or I'll help her in the washing of the dishes, or I'll first time when we go to the grocery, I'll be by her side inside the grocery instead of going to another place when she's in the grocery. I just want to make her feel she's special to me. And what interests her, I would like to be part of it. So, practical steps that you work on to always make your wife happy. Okay? So, it's a work in progress. One major reason why marriages fail is that most couples expect their marriage to work out successfully on its own, even without putting a lot of real effort to make it work. Just because you're now married doesn't mean your marriage will automatically work out all right. No. Doesn't work that way. In marriage, nothing is automatic. If you don't work on it, one day you can lose it. Let me repeat that. In marriage, nothing is automatic. If you don't work on that marriage to ensure it will be strong, it will be happy, one day you may lose it. Okay? It's a commitment for a lifetime. Most married couples do not know how to make their marriage work. By default, we don't. You know why by default we don't? If you came from a family where the marriage of your parents were not very, ideal, maybe dysfunctional marriage in your parents, our tendency is to carry over into our lives the failed patterns of our parents because that's all we know, right? And by default, if you have parents whose marriage is really, wow, awesome, well, you're one of the rare people. When you come into your marriage, you have a lot of good things to put into your marriage, okay? But most of us, by default, we don't know how to make a marriage work, okay? We simply carry over the failed patterns of our parents' marriages. I often ask also people who want to get married, would you like me to share with you a good picture of what marriage looks like? Of course, they say, yes, Pastor. Look at your parents' marriages. How does it look like? And some of them, sometimes they begin to frown. Oh, you mean, Pastor, that's what marriage looks like? Yeah, it's possible. And sometimes they think, do I still want to get married? If that's the kind of life that we will have, just like my parents, okay? Well, that's what's going to happen if you don't work on your marriage as a commitment, okay? It takes more than love to make a marriage work. Success in marriage requires more than romantic feelings, because romantic feelings rise and fall like a tide. They rise and fall. Sometimes it's also hormonal for a woman, right? It also requires what? Genuine spirituality, because if you don't have a strong relationship with God, in those times of weakness, in times when you're so discouraged in your marriage, and you don't know what to do, and you just want to, just explode and, try to find, your own outlet. And sometimes the outlets are not really the good ones. Without a strong relationship with God, it's hard to remain faithful to your marriage. Very hard. And without a relationship with God, you won't have the wisdom that it takes to handle those sometimes difficult conflicts that you have with your wife. If you're a man of prayer, God can give you wisdom to see you through what you're going through. You need to have genuine spirituality. Romantic love is not enough. Another thing, we also need to have knowledge. There are so many books, there's so much literature on marriage written by Christian authors, and we can learn from them. Okay? We can also learn from seminars like this, workshops on marriage. So that's why I congratulate you that you're here tonight. You're listening to the seminar. This can help you improve your marriage or help you prepare yourself better to be a great husband one day. Okay? So it demands knowledge, motivation for learning. In marriage, when you stop learning, sometimes that's when the marriage starts failing. Okay? Because we cannot presume we know everything about how to make a marriage work. That's why we should never stop learning from others. The other is communication skills. By default, we don't know how to communicate effectively. There are some habits in communication that we have to unlearn, and we have to develop the better habits in communication. Like, for example, we tend to be more critical, especially when we're frustrated with our spouse. We tend to be more critical than encouraging. Communication skills tell you that if you want to encourage a person to develop in a certain area that is bothering you, the best way is to encourage the person rather than criticize him. So can you say this to the person beside you? Instead of criticizing, why don't you encourage and inspire? That's communication skill. You understand that? Or learning to correct your husband or correct your wife without creating offense. That takes communication skill, right? If there's something that's really hurting you in the way your wife treats you, if you don't know how to communicate right, you can make it worse, right? So, of course, here there's also the layer of culture. Of course, American culture, they may have a different way of communicating that properly and more effectively than us Filipinos. But here, if you're going to correct somebody, be sure to affirm the person first. And be sure you have not been a cause of frustration to your wife in the past days. Okay? And then affirm your wife. Make her feel happy. Do something to really make her happy. And then approach her with the pronoun we and us rather than you. You say, you are like this. You are doing this to me. You. Just the finger already hurts, You. You're attacking your wife. That's how she feels. Rather, we can say, I'm really concerned about something in our marriage that's really hurting, particularly me, and I know I care about our marriage. I think we can do better. But I would like to share what I'm struggling with, and I need your help. I need your help in this because I want us both to be happy. Is it all right if I share with you one area where I feel a little disappointed? But I assure you, I'm sharing this because I care enough for our relationship. For us Filipinos, for that also our Americans here, we have to go that path. Because in our culture, people are more relational. One of the big differences between American culture and Filipino culture is this. In American culture, truth is more important than relationships. In Filipino culture, relationships oftentimes are more important than the truth. Let's not talk about it, because we talk about it, we fight. So let's not talk about it. But that is important in the relationship. Iniiwasan ang away. I don't want to argue with it anymore. But that's important. You don't want to argue because you want peace, right? You want harmonious relationships. And that's why when we confront a person or correct a person, we have to do it gently. Affirm the person. Build a bridge first between your heart and the person's heart. And when the person is ready, then deliver your request. But do it by making your wife feel, this is because I care about our relationship. And I know you can help me here. So don't make your wife feel as if she's the bad guy. Rather, make her feel, I know you can contribute to our happiness. I need you. I need you here. Okay? So that is communication skill. So having a romantic feeling for your life is not going to make your relationship successful when during times of conflict, you don't know how to communicate effectively. It takes a skill to communicate right. Okay? So communication skills are important. Number 2. Next is conflict management skills. How do you deal with conflict? Usually, it's either fight or flee. Right? Fight or flee. But I tell you, there are other approaches to conflict more than fight or flee. Okay? And one of these topics in the coming months, we will deal about how to handle conflict in marriage. And the principles are universal. If you have not yet married, fine, come. Those principles can be applied even in conflict with your friends, conflict with your teachers, conflict with your parents. It applies. But it also applies to the marital relationship. How do you deal with conflict in marriage? So conflict management skills. You know, the most common way we handle conflict is to be angry. Right? The easiest thing to do when there's conflict is to be angry. But the moment you become angry, listen to this, that means you're no longer capable of dealing with the issue. That's why when you're getting angry in a conflict situation with your wife, don't push it. Once you're angry, that means you are no longer capable of handling the conflict well. It's better to withdraw for a while and pray about it. And when you feel you know how to deal with it, then you go back to it again. Okay? So when you're angry, stop before you do something you may regret. Okay? So that is conflict management skills. And another thing, what's important in marriage is this one. What's this? Character. I tell you, marriage is one of life's best workshops for a man's character. It is in your marriage, oftentimes, where your character is proven or when your character fails. Okay? That's why marriage is such a positive contribution to our development as men. How we deal with the conflict with our wives enable us to build the right kind of character that will enable us to make this relationship last for a lifetime. If we are not patient with our wife, if we are not considerate about her weaknesses, if we're always trying to push, I'm right, and you're wrong, we don't have the humility to accept when we're wrong because you don't have that. That marriage is not going to last long. It takes a lot of character to make a marriage last. Of course, part of character development is developing maturity. Maturity means doing what is right, even if you feel everything in you feel you don't want to do it, but you know it's right. You don't allow your feelings to run your marriage. Even if you don't feel like respecting your life, even if you don't feel like trying to make your wife happy because you're frustrated with her constant nagging at you, and you don't want to think about her happiness anymore, it is maturity that enables you to still make her happy even though you don't feel like doing it. That's maturity. You don't allow your feelings to rule your relationship. Okay? Maturity and marriage will not last long without money. Okay. That is one of the major conflict areas in marriage. Finances. Material security. Because a woman's highest value is security. A man's highest value, more than security, is his significance. The deepest drive in men is the drive for significance. We also want to be secure, but the sense of significance is more important to us. But for a woman, she doesn't feel significant until she feels secure with her husband and her husband's capability to meet the needs of the family, because a woman's life is connected primarily to her home. What happens to the home affects the wife. If needs are not being met, it troubles her. Sometimes when even the arrangement of the house is not right, it troubles her. Right? And so the man must be able to supply every need in the family. And that's what makes her happy, because she feels secure with you. You are capable of meeting the needs in the home, right? So can you say to the person beside you, marriage needs a lot of money. Not just love. Another reason why many marriages are failing is because many enter marriage without enough psychological. Many people enter marriage, at a very young age, psychologically not yet prepared for the demands of a life together with another person living with you under one roof. Okay, they enter marriage without enough psychological, moral. Here, listen to this, guys, singles. If you are a two-timer, you know what a two-timer is? Sometimes a three-timer. I got acquainted with a young man who was a five-timer. He got 5 girlfriends at the same time. And he's trying not to let each of those 5 girls know that he has other 4 relationships. If you develop that habit, the wedding ceremony with the one you choose to be your wife is not going to change your habit. The wedding day is not a magic ceremony where you instantly change into a different person. Yes, if you're more than a two-timer or a two-timer before you get married, it is not very far that one day you'll also be a two-timer, three-timer, four-timer after you get married, because it's about your habits. Sometimes the most only lasting, the most enduring things in life are your habits. Understand that, okay? That's why if you don't have enough moral preparation, you're not building the right moral habits in your life, later on it can lead to your failure in marriage. Compromises, falling into sexual temptations before getting married, it's not going to make you immune to sexual temptations after you get married. In fact, after you get married, you'll be more susceptible to sexual temptations because you've experienced sex already with your wife, and your body will be longing for it. And if you're not satisfied with your wife, and there's a beautiful girl in the office that taps you like this, good night. Because your habits prepared you for that. You understand that? People enter marriage without enough spiritual preparation. They don't understand God's design in marriage, God's purpose in marriage. Okay, why love? Love means I focus on my wife's happiness above my own. My happiness is secondary. That's what love is about. And I need God to sustain me in my commitment to my wife, because as a man, I tend to be selfish. I tend to gravitate to my happiness, my happiness, my happiness. And then you start talking with another girl who's not your wife about how unhappy you are with your wife, what the problems you're having with your wife. You keep sharing that to another girl, and soon you're there in an adulterous relationship. And as I told you before, one of the steps to adultery is sharing your problems with your wife and another woman that's not your wife, especially a single woman. Let me tell you, 90% of adulteries begin right there. The moment you share with another woman your dissatisfaction with your wife, you just made the first step to adultery. Okay? That's why I always tell the men, never, never share your frustrations or your dissatisfaction with your wife with any woman. Because you might not be aware of it, you're falling into a trap if you do that. Understand this? Okay? And so that's why you need to have enough relationship with God to enable you to withstand those temptations, and also financial preparation. Many marriages that are entered into prematurely without any stable source of income end up getting wrecked because of finances. Okay? I will not ask you to raise your hand if you say that that's what happened to me, Pastor. But I'm sure there will be a number of you who experience that, okay? Character is important in marriage. The true measure of a man is not the success of his profession, but the success of his marriage. His true character is tested by the strength of his marital integrity. You may be successful in your job. You may have earned millions of pesos because you're very good in your abilities and your skills in your workplace. But if you fail in your marriage, no amount of success in your business can compensate for failure in your marriage. Okay? A marriage vow is no match to passion, especially lustful passion, where there is no strength of character. And there is no strength of character where there is no fear or love of God. Can we read this together? No other success in life can compensate for failure in the home. That's David McKay. I've always been repeating this in almost every dinner, right? Something I need you to memorize. Okay? A man's true character, can we read this together? A man's true character is measured by how he handles three things: power, adversity, and his wife. If you want to know the true character of a man, see what he does with power. If the power corrupts him, now you know his true character. If a man, when given power, begins to use that power to serve others more, that reveals a good character in a person. Okay? Another test of a man's character is what he does when he faces adversity, trouble, frustrations in life, disappointments, and even opposition or even persecution. What comes out of a man in those times of adversity reveals the true character of the person. And I tell you, the kind of adversity that is most revealing of our character is adversity with your wife. Okay? And thirdly, you will know a man's character by how he treats his wife. A Greek proverb says, you can know volumes about a man by how he treats his wife and his children. You can know volumes about a man by how he treats his wife and his children. That's where his character begins to come out. Okay? It takes a real man, can we say this together? It takes a real man to make a marriage last for a lifetime, because it takes a lot of character, humility, integrity, patience, gentleness to make a marriage last for a lifetime. In the end, the true insurance for a lifetime relationship is your character. Myth number 2. Many people get into marriage thinking, oh, we can make it on our own. We'll make this good together. Well-meaning. It's good. That means there's commitment. We're going to make it happen together, okay? But in reality, there's no guarantee if you're both working out together alone that is necessarily going to be successful. Marriages fail when couples think they can do it without God and without the help of others. Okay? Marriage was instituted before the fall of man. After the fall, given the fallen nature of man, it has become a gamble of tremendous risk. Do you know that getting married is a gamble? You don't know what to expect. Right? How many of you, for those who are married, you come to realize that, getting married is really a gamble? Can you raise your hands? You just don't know what to expect there, right? And that's why, if you are only depending on your own knowledge, your own experience, your own ability, when those unexpected things come into your marriage and you're faced with habits, character traits of your spouse that you finally realize you just cannot stand anymore. Okay? What happens is that you begin to fail in your relationship with your spouse. Okay? You just realize you married a very imperfect person, and your spouse is realizing she also married a very imperfect person. And you just know how to handle that anymore. Okay? That is why we cannot make it. This is the truth number 2. We can't make it without God and without the help of others. Okay? A marriage will not be strong if spouses do not have a strong and authentic relationship with God. You know, there's always been one reason why a husband will not leave his wife despite all frustrations is because he loves God. And he will do the will of God. For God's sake, he will stay and be committed to his family. Even his wife falls into adultery, he will not allow the double standard mentality of men to make him reject his wife forever. You know what I mean by double standard mentality of men? When men adulterate, when we adulterate, it's just okay. I mean, you know, what's new? When my wife adulterates, wow, it's a big issue. But when I adulterate, you know, don't make this big. Men are by nature adulterers, you know. We are so many excuses. And I tell you, a real man will not offer excuses to justify his failures. A real man will never offer excuses to justify his failures or even blame his wife for his choices. The moment you make your choice as a man, you become completely responsible before God for the choice you made, regardless of who started it. Remember, Eve was the first one who sinned, but God made Adam accountable first. You understand that? Because he made his choice to disobey God. Okay? Oh, the woman made me do it. God will never accept that. Adam, you made a choice. And for that choice, I hold you fully responsible. You should have been the one to tell your wife not to eat of the forbidden tree. I told you! But you listen to the voice of your wife. Instead of listening to my voice, I hold you responsible. Don't blame your wife. That is her responsibility. Yours is your responsibility. Couples need to draw on God's wisdom and strength to be able to overcome the weaknesses of sinful human nature that often mar and mangle the marriage relationship. That's why the saying here is true. The family, the couple that prays together stays together. So let me ask you a question. How many of you pray with your wife on a regular basis, together with your wife? Amen. Okay? Thank you for those honest enough not to raise their hands. Let me tell you, without a relationship with God, your marriage won't make it successfully to the end. You need God there. Because God was the one who designed marriage, not man. Only God knows how to make it work. And because God designed marriage, He is committed to make it work, but you will need His grace to make it work. But if you're not depending on God, He will not make that grace available to you, because all God gives grace only to the humble, according to the Word of God. God is opposed to the proud, according to the Bible, but He gives grace to the humble. And the humble is the one who prays. Okay? A marriage has greater potential to succeed if couples establish accountability, oh, that's the big word, for men. Accountability and interdependence with others in a caring and nurturing community. How many of you here have a couples ministry in your church? Couples ministry. Okay, great. Are you part of the couples ministry? Are you a member of the couples ministry? I would encourage you to, okay? You know, in a fallen world like ours, sometimes there are things you cannot really handle successfully together. And that's where others who care about you can come in and help mediate, okay? But only as you allow them to, okay? And that means you're willing to make yourself accountable to that caring community in your marriage, as they are also making themselves accountable to the other members of the community for their marriage. The Word of God commands us that when you are a believer in Christ, we are commanded to encourage one another, admonish one another, pray for one another, and even counsel one another. God designed the body of Christ, the church, to be to be a community of accountability and support. You need to be part of that community. So that people, if you're struggling in marriage, at least you know there are people praying for you. You're not alone. There are people who will encourage you to, just to be firm, just to go on. Don't give up. You need those people. And that is necessary for your marriage to last for a lifetime. You cannot do it alone. Okay? Success in any dimension in life is always the product of the combined strengths of many people united by a common vision. If you have a couple's myths and your vision is to strengthen the marriages and you're all united to that goal, you can now share your strengths to strengthen one another in the journey of marriage together. Amen? How many of you are in churches that does not have a couples ministry? Can you raise your hands, please? You don't have a couples ministry. Okay, that's great. So all of you have a couples ministry. That's great. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says, a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. A marriage to succeed needs more than 2 to make it work. It requires a third party who can help make it work. And you see, the third party is God and other people. It also takes the wrong third party to help destroy it. Okay? Be careful about the third party, okay? Myth number 3. Oh, my marriage is going to be a happy one, successful, if you change. I'm fed up with you. Right? So the myth is that you think your marriage will be happy if you give the ball to the other. I mean, you better chase or else this marriage is not going to last, okay? It's the other's ball. Marriages fail when couples think it's only the other person that needs to change in order for the marriage to work. No. Both have to be willing to make necessary changes in certain areas of your relationship to make it work. And I tell you, change hurts. Change hurts. But listen to this. There are only 2 kinds of pain that you can experience in your marriage. The pain of change or the pain of regret. The only difference is that the pain of change weighs ounces, but the pain of regret weighs tons. Are you still here? You want your marriage to work? Are you willing to make necessary changes? It hurts. It's painful. It's going to be a struggle, but it's a good struggle because it will win you a lasting marriage, the reward of a lasting marriage. Amen? Marriage is like a duet. It takes both to sing in the right pitch together to make a successful performance. One of the singers maybe have a great, singing ability. The other is singing out of tune. Their performance is going to fail. Both have to sing at the right pitch. A happy marriage is the product of each one putting the happiness of the other before one's own. Women, by nature, are more capable of giving real love to the husband and sometimes unselfish love, while us men, because the relational is always our weakness, you have to keep reminding ourselves that I committed myself to make my wife happy. Because we tend to be more focused on performance and work rather than nurturing our relationship with our wife. Women are deeply relational beings by divine design. We are deeply performance beings by divine design. And the performer oftentimes, takes relationships for granted. You understand that? That's why we need to commit ourselves to this. I already shared this a while ago. The truth is, don't say it's the other's ball. If you want your marriage to work, change begins with you. It also includes the wife. Okay? The potential for success in the marriage relationship is enhanced when each partner focuses on becoming the right life partner instead of focusing on making the other the right one. You get that? We often are always trying to find ways, how to make my spouse become a better spouse so that I can be happy. But let me tell you this, there will be greater potential for happiness when you decide first to become the right partner for your wife. What do you need to improve in your relationship with your wife? What do you need to learn so that you can be more sensitive to your wife? And when you begin to change, you already have solved 50% of your marital problem. When you're the one starting to change. Okay? The biggest deception in marriages is that we're always blaming the other for the failure of the marriage. It takes two to tango in a marriage. It takes two to lead to a marital failure. Okay? My wife may not be doing well with me, but if I'm also not doing well, that's the tango of death. Okay? The basic premise upon which a successful marriage is built is the willingness to change and make the necessary adjustments to make the relationship work. Okay? Myth number 4. We're getting more excited here. When we get into the marriage, we often believe we know how to love. I won the heart of this woman. I know how to love. Okay? But sometimes, you forget what you did before the marriage, after some years in marriage. You're not doing anymore what you were doing before the marriage. And now you're wondering why your marriage is failing. Okay? Marriage is failed when the couple presume that they know how to really love one another. The majority of married men and women do not know how to rightly love a person of the opposite gender because most do not understand gender differences. Okay? The truth is, love has a language. And you have to learn the language well. And besides, what Gary Chapman wrote, his best-selling book is entitled The 5 Love Languages, right? I'm going to quote from that at the end of this lecture. The 5 love languages. He discovered that people perceive love in different ways. They feel love in different ways, not the same. But let me tell you this, because of the gender difference between men and women, men tend to speak a different language of love than women do. And when we speak a man's version of the language, sometimes our wife doesn't feel love. Because that's not her language. For example, very common complaint. You don't love me anymore. Remember the video? You don't love me anymore. You never spend time with me. You never talk, like this. How could you say I don't love you? I've been working so hard, just to feed you, to give you everything you need, and you tell me I don't love you? Because a man's language of loving is doing, working, performing, right? A woman's language of love is different. It's time, attention, conversation. That's our language. Appreciation, affirmation. That's our language of love. A woman needs words, and lots of them. You have to remind her, I love you. The greatest moments of my life, as far as I can remember, are the moments I spend with you. Wow. Be sure that's true. But those are powerful words. Women are sensitive to 3 things in a man. Number 1, they're sensitive to your words. Number 2, they're sensitive to your look. And thirdly, they're sensitive to your touch. The wrong touch gets the wrong reaction. The right touch communicates 1,000 words of love to the woman. Right? Especially also the timing of the touch. When your wife is mad at you, don't you dare touch her. But when she's mad about somebody else, be all over her. You got that? Timing is also important. Okay? And also the look. How often do you look into the eyes of your wife each day? Just one look communicates 1,000 words to a woman. When you combine those 3 things, the word, the touch, and the look, it's like heaven came down and glory filled my soul. I don't know if I share with you my experience in UST when I was invited by a priest, I was invited rather by the students to do a lecture on marriage based on the Bible. This is part of their project. When I came there, I did not realize that their teacher was a priest, a young priest, younger than myself. And so I gave a lecture on Genesis chapter 2, how marriage started, what are God's purpose and design for marriage. And then I mentioned that, women are sensitive to those three things, the word, the look, and the touch. And I said, whenever, Joseph, can you look there? Yeah. Let's say I'm a woman and I'm here. Let's say she's the woman, rather. And I'm the man, okay? And she's looking there. Come on, look there. Yeah, thank you. If I'm looking at her and her breasts, and she's looking the direction, she already knows you're looking at her. Women have almost 180 degrees visual range, especially during puberty. During the adolescent period up to the late 20s, women are very sensitive to the look of a man from any angle. She may be there, you may be right here at the back. If you're staring at her, she will feel that intuitively. And sometimes she would, look around as if she's looking for somebody, and then she says, she's right, you're there looking at her. And so, while I was sharing that, the students noticed that the priest was flashing red. And so later on, after I'm done, he said, Pastor Magalong, I would like to thank you for that wonderful exposition about marriage. And I honestly learned a lot. And then he looks at his students, especially the girls, and started to humble himself. To the ladies in my class, if I ever have looked at you from any angle in a way that was not nice, now I know that you know. Will you please forgive me? And 3 of the girls were screaming, yes! Women are sensitive to your look, especially your wife. When you're going out on a date, be sure your eyes are all over her, not all over the other girls who are out there in the park. When you talk to your wife, look into her eyes. That makes her feel so loved. Sometimes when your wife is talking, yeah. And sometimes to remind myself, by the way, I'm doing work while she's talking to me, I'm still looking at my computer. I have to stop, look at my wife and listen to her. That's her language of love. Eyes. Okay? Love is a language. God has designed man and woman uniquely to reflect 2 dimensions of God's image on earth, the functional and the relational. I shared this with you in our topic, How to Love a Woman, remember? The man was designed to be a functional being, a creature of performance, the creature of the soil. He finds his greatest fulfillment in what he does and achieves. On the other hand, the woman was designed to be a relational being and the creature of the heart. She finds her greatest fulfillment in loving and being loved. This difference in design was meant for man and woman in marriage to fully reflect the image of God by complementing one another with each one's uniqueness. I'm going fast now. So here are the gender differences by God's design. This is a review, by the way, of how to love a woman. Do you remember that? Okay. Men tend to seek affirmation through achievement. Women seek affirmation by being loved. Men's dominant fear is to experience failure because he's a performance-oriented being. Failure violates his nature as a performer. But for a woman, her most dominant fear, and the one thing that can give her trauma in her life, is betrayal of the one she loves, because it violates her nature as a relational being. That relationship is betrayed. It comes against the very core of her being as a woman when she's betrayed by the husband. Men tend to preserve themselves by diversionary activity, right? When you're frustrated, you're angry, you try to find activity so you can, find an outlet for your emotional pressure, your emotional pain. You try to do something to try to divert that pain through activity. But women, they preserve themselves through verbal ventilation. If they don't speak it out, they're going to explode from inside. That's why women are very straightforward about their complaints about their husbands. They will tell you straight how they feel. because they need to let that out so they can get control over it. Okay? And so when your wife begins to ventilate on you, please don't fight her. That's not what she's looking for. Be patient. Even if she may be releasing some hurting words to you, just stand your ground. You're a man. Stand your ground, okay? Let her finish. Don't try to interrupt her. Don't try to argue with her. Don't try to defend yourself. Defending yourself will make it worse. Because she feels you're not listening and you don't care about her. Especially when she's hurt with something that you did. She will ventilate. You know, it's better for your wife to ventilate on you than to ventilate with other people, right? Because they will find an outlet to find release from all that pain inside by finding somebody to talk to. That's their way of preserving themselves. Okay? And that's why as a man, if you know how to handle your woman when she's in pain, especially when she's angry with you, just be patient and be gentle with her no matter what she says. Because once the ventilation is over, she will admire you for being strong enough for her. When she needed to let it out so that she can gain more control over her emotions. A woman cannot gain control over emotions if she's so full of pain. When she releases that, she's able to gain more control. That's why as a counselor, I told you, when I counsel women, to me, I enjoy counseling women with my wife, that is, because you just have to listen to them. Let them talk. Don't interrupt, just let them talk. And just so that you are with them. Oftentimes at the end of the long talk, when they're done, they finally realize how to solve the problem. And simply guide them with questions. And then they get it. Now they're ready for a solution. But when they're still ventilating, they are not asking for a solution. Our tendency as men, when our wife is ventilating, okay, let's solve the problem. Let's do this. Please listen. The wife will say, I don't need solutions right now. I just need somebody to hear me. Let me just hear me out. And when I'm done, maybe I'll be open for solutions. Are you still here? Okay? Verbal ventilation. Basic need of men is respect, esteem, support, and service. This is review. Okay? While women, their basic need is attention, affection, affirmation, and assurance. The 4 A's, yung 4 na alas, as one of the men here said. I cannot forget that, Pastor. I said there's the 4 A's of my relationship with my wife. Her need is attention. I'll give her attention. I'll show her affection. I'll affirm her regularly. And I will assure her when she's insecure, when she's scared, when she is fearful about something. My job is to assure her, not fight with her. Okay? When women are complaining to you, sometimes what they need is not a fight, but your assurance. Your assurance. Because that's what they need at that moment. Okay? Attention, affection is expressed through the word, the loving look, and the loving touch. That's affection. Affection is also shown by giving gifts, surprise gifts to your wife. Affirmation, verbal. Do you say thank you to your wife when she gives you a nice cup of coffee? Do you affirm her when she cooks something really well? Do you affirm her for, washing your clothes regularly? Do you affirm her for really dealing with the children while you're there at work, helping out with the children? Do you affirm her when she's, serving you, even when she's tired? How often do you affirm your wife verbally? Let me tell you this. A word of affirmation to your wife can make your relationship with her last for a lifetime. A word of affirmation a day. 1 day, 1 word of affirmation. I think that's not too much, right? But if you can just do that, never let a day pass without saying something to your wife to affirm her. I tell you, she'll always be in love with you. And you affirm her even when she's criticizing you. That will make her feel guilty. I say, you don't like this, like that. Han, I really love you because of how you take care of the house, how you serve me as your husband. Thank you. I'm proud of you as my wife. I mean, saying that when she's criticizing you, it's like throwing water over the fire and defeating her. The problem is that we are too weak, that when a woman complains to us, we allow that to affect us and we fight back. You know how a woman feels about that husband? You're too weak for her. You're just too weak for her. That when she loses control, she needs you to be strong enough for her not to lose control. So you can bring her under control the right way. And if she loses control and he sees you also lose control, she's hopeless. She needs you to be strong for her when she's weak. When she's vulnerable, she needs you to be understanding, considerate, and strong for her, because she needs you to be strong when she's beginning to break apart. And that's what a woman longs for in her husband. Please don't allow me to take control of you. I want you to be my man. When I'm airing out frustrations, please don't fight me. Because if you fight me, that means you've also lost control. Where do I go now? I cannot even depend on you to be strong for me when I'm weak. You understand this? That's what love is about. She needs that assurance, that affirmation. A little time left. Men want action, do, less talk. Women, on the other hand, want more talk. Okay? I'm just reviewing. A date without a conversation is just a social event, not a real date. Sa Tagalog, ang date na walang kwento, walang kwenta sa babae. Because as men, we speak a language of performance. So for us, a date is watching a movie, watching a concert, walking along the mall, or walking along the park. That is a date, is about doing. For a woman, no, a date is not about activities. A date is about talking. About the things that are meaningful to the wife. Even if you have just, ano ba yun, yung balot, yung egg. Ha? Quick. Kaya quick lang yung kinain sa date. Pero you're full of conversation for a wife. You just made a date for her. It's about conversation. It's about connecting. It's about relating. That's what a woman wants. She wants a relationship. A man wants achievement. A woman wants a relationship. Because she's relational. That's how God designed her. Thinks and talks topically. Okay, I've discussed this with you, right? When a man talks about a topic, a woman takes it relationally. A woman will, wow, this is beautiful. And the husband looks, yeah, it's so expensive. You know what you're telling your wife? You're not worth it. A woman will take your words always personally because she's a very relational person. Don't blame her. God designed her that way. To balance us as men. So that we also learn to develop relational sensitivity to her because that's part of our molding as men. Jesus Christ was the perfect model of manhood. He was perfect in performance. He said, it is finished. But he was also perfect in relationship. He gave his life for you. He always never stopped thinking of you when he was there on that cross. Deeply relational, perfectly relational. That's Jesus Christ. And we're to become like him, we need the help of our wife to help build that relational dimension in us as men. Men prefer distance and non-involvement. Women want proximity and involvement. Kaya we often call them usi. Oh, what happened to your talk with your boss? Well, it was okay. How okay? What exactly did you talk about? Oh, okay, we talk about, my request for a raise for my pay. And it was okay. What do you mean, okay? What exactly did he say? The woman gets into the details. Why? Because she wants to be involved in your life. Because she wants a relationship. A relationship. That's what a woman longs for. That's why men value privacy, because you want to, don't to talk about everything to my wife, right? We don't want to talk about everything that I'm doing with my wife, but the wife wants you to talk about almost everything. Because she's a woman, that's her love language. If you keep sharing with her what's going on in your life, she feels so happy because she feels that you are having a relationship and that you trust her in that relationship. She values intimacy. Men are driven by the need for significance. It's always our ego that's important. Women are driven by security, emotionally secure. And if they're not emotionally secure, that's when they become a test to the husband's patience. Women perceive things rationally. Women perceive things intuitively. That's why if you're making a decision, don't forget to consult your wife. Not everything can be seen by reason. A woman's pakiramdam sometimes can see consequences before they happen. Even when you're denying you're not having an affair, your wife can feel through you. That's intuition. Okay? And so, Gary Chapman, 5 Love Languages, Men's Edition. These are 5 languages of love shared on both genders, but as men, this is applicable to our wives. If you want to make our wife feel love, you have to speak their language. And that includes words of affirmation, quality time with her. For a woman, listen to this, happiness is being together. For a woman, happiness is being together with her husband. Okay? Receiving gifts, that's where they feel special. Acts of service, serve her in the home, help her wash the dishes, help her where she's cooking. Do some acts of service to her that makes her feel so loved. And also physical touch. Give her lots of touch and embrace. Never let the day pass without hugging your wife before going to bed. She needs that. That's her vitamins every day. That's vitamins to her. Words, touch, and look, that's vitamins to a woman. Okay? And so, a wife's nagging is often the product of her upbringing. I'm just reviewing this for those who are not here during our topic on how to love a woman. A wife's nagging is often the product of her upbringing and triggered or aggravated by lack of attention, affection, sensitivity, and assurance from the husband. When your wife is nagging you, please don't blame her as if she's the only person responsible for what's going on. If your wife begins to nag you, you better ask yourself, where am I failing my wife? Okay? If ever you fall into adultery because you have a nagging wife, one day you will see your wife in that other woman. If you do not change. Because if you're not giving her attention, affection, affirmation, and assurance, that other woman will one day start nagging you too. The problem is not in the woman. The problem is how you relate with the woman and your wife. You understand this? A guy went home, saw this beautiful flower on a pot and brought it home. And because it was fresh, he would love to water that flower every day. But somewhere down the road, because of the busyness of work, he stopped watering the flower, and soon the flower started to fade and smell bad. And so he said, useless flower. Threw it away, bought a new one. Started, watering it every day. But later on, because of the busyness of life, she stopped watering and then started to, and said, useless flower, buy another one. And then the same thing happens. Where do you think is the problem? The flower or the one who's taking care of the flower? Women need that attention, that affection, that affirmation, that assurance. That's their vitamins. That's why that makes them feel loved and secure. Here I end. A review. When your wife is nagging you, there are only 4 common reasons why they're doing that. Don't deal with the argument. Deal with where it's coming from. A woman will nag when she has an unmet need that remains unmet in the marriage, especially your lack of attention. Your lack of attention. your lack of attention to building the relationship and nurturing the relationship, you're giving time to be with her. When a woman finally gets so frustrated that she doesn't feel love anymore because you're not speaking her language of love, she'll start nagging you because she wants attention. It's now getting attention in an irritable manner. She's begging for attention when she's nagging you. When she's nagging you, it only means she's not giving the attention she's looking for, and she has now to beg you by nagging, give me some attention. So don't blame her. You're not watering the flower anymore. Okay? Second, a woman starts to snag when there are apprehensions or insecurities in her life that you're not trying to settle. She needs assurance. Okay? A woman will nag when she is hurt about you and you're not dealing with the hurt. You're not apologizing. You're not being sensitive that you're hurting her already. That's why she'll start nagging you. And finally, a woman nags when there's unhealed past trauma. If she grew up with a father who adulterated and she really hated her dad for doing that, or her mom, she can become very jealous over her husband because there is a fear inside that the husband may do the same thing that the father did to them. And she'll be more jealous than the ordinary woman. And the reason she's starting nagging is because there's a past pain that's never healed. And that's where you can help her by assuring her, and giving her everything she needs for her to be assured. That will stop her from nagging you because you're now meeting her need. Amen?